Should we be able to hear this?
I'm not hearing anything.
We should be able to stand up and want to salute Old Glory watching this and listening to the music.
Welcome to the Robinson Report. I'm your host, S.E. Robinson. Joining me tonight, I've got DEC and Tim and Canton. We're just coming off a Super Tuesday. We're going to talk a little bit about some politics, but first I wanted to just do a little bit of talking about the Kirk Minahan Show world. I talked with Kirk briefly today. He wants to record something on Sunday solo, so I think it's going to be an update for the Minifans, maybe give us a view into what the future is going to look like for the Kirk Minahan Show. Don't really have any update apart from that. Late tonight, around midnight, we're going to be releasing a brief, 10-minute episode that Mike and I recorded today. So you guys can look for that tomorrow morning. But the first thing I guess I want to talk about with you guys is this bracket thing. It seems to me that in podcast Jesus's absence, perhaps we should be going after some of his enemies, the Boston Globe, WEEI. There's many enemies that we've talked about at length, but instead we're doing this kind of circle jerk about a bracket and who's the best Minifan. I don't know. I see a lot of clout chasing going on, and I think that there's good clout chasing and then there's bad clout chasing. But I don't like everybody jockeying over this bracket idea. I don't know. Are the Mincels taking control of the Miniverse from the Minifans? It just seems odd to me.
Where are you seeing the clout chasing? I always can never figure out what clout chasing means. Give me a little bit more about what you mean by that clout chasing.
I don't know. It's just that people are taking this whole bracket thing much more serious than they should be taking, making prank phone calls, making parody shows, making parody songs, doing YouTube content, that kind of thing. I don't know. There's just something about the fight in the bracket that just doesn't really sit well with me. I don't know. Am I off base here?
I think with the brackets, it was offensive in the fact that they did so little research and had so little knowledge, and it seems like they just pulled names out of the hat. Nobody seemed to land where it made sense, and they had people like the 617 report who weren't even part of it. I think the story here is more about the Mincels destroying everything again and being absolute morons and knowing only the show on a peripheral level.
That's tough talk from the former president of the Minifan Nation. Where do you stand on the bracket, Tim and Canton? First of all, I forget, you guys are both in it, right? Yes. You guys have to be a 1 seeds, I would imagine.
Nope, they made me a 2 seed, and they put me in the same bracket as MHB.
Oh, well, that's not fair.
I mean, why would we not want to be up in the finals?
Tim and Canton.
I think the idea is awesome. I do follow the Twitter comments, but I'm not really paying attention to it. I even conceded already. I mean, Steve from Providence, the guy, he used to make me crack
tough matchup.
Up laughing hearing his phone calls. Yeah, so, and I'm cool with it. I just hope people have fun, but I'm with DEC. Man, they got the vitriol just came spitting out of people's Twitter accounts. And
yeah, I guess maybe that's what it is. It's the bracket has turned Minifans against each other. Maybe that's what I don't like. I don't like to see the infighting amongst the Minifans. I mean, there are some legitimate things to be called out for, but I don't like to see people fighting over, their space in March Madness. But anyways, so now to the real stuff, the thing that everybody's coming here for, the politics. So Super Tuesday, huge surprise. I think that Joe Biden's performance, his comeback, is probably unlike anything in any of our lifetimes that we've seen. I mean, you saw John McCain and John Kerry both had similar kind of comebacks. They were counted down, but that was before any of the states actually started caucusing or voting. That was more just media-driven narratives. But for Biden to have the performance that he did last night was, I think, just stunning. So Joe Biden, obviously, good day. Elizabeth Warren, what a bad day. I mean, I tweeted out a little bit about it, but I've always just remembered this column that James Pindell, he's just this idiot blogger, writer for the Boston Globe, that he wrote about 2 years ago that said Bernie Sanders' path to victory lies. He's got to go through Elizabeth Warren basically if he wants to win New Hampshire. And just what a poorly aged take that is. I had no idea that Biden was going to do this well in Massachusetts. I was shocked by it. I do think that now this is a two-person race, and it'll be interesting to see what Elizabeth Warren does. The Washington Post writer named Annie Linsky, she's a former Globe writer. She's always had pretty good sources with Elizabeth Warren's campaign, and they just put out a story saying that high-level people for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are talking about some kind of strategic move that they're going to make to take out Biden or to join forces, have the left wing of the party join forces. But I don't know. Warren's always been stubborn. I don't know if I could see her going, full bore for Bernie Sanders. I think the more likely idea is that she just kind of, either stays in and tries to fight it to the bitter end, or maybe she just drops out peacefully altogether. But I can't really see her getting behind Bernie Sanders. What about you guys?
I think that her time to. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I having been born and bred here, this is something that I think people forget. She is, while she's simpatico with Bernie Sanders, she most aligned by and won't be his VP. Just get that out of the way, right? Was picked by the party to run for the Senate seat against Scott Brown.
Yeah,
Stevie Lynch should have had that. He's the gun in that seat. They pushed Steve Lynch aside, all his experience, all his tribal knowledge that he had in the state of Massachusetts. Stevie Lynch would have walked into that seat and taken it and never given it up. So my point is, she is a boot and through. I think she's just holding on until she can get, Secretary of State, Treasury, something higher than where she is today. And the last thing I'd say before I hand it off to DEC, what's Liz Warren? I just would ask: is it about the cause or the candidate? Because for Liz Warren, it's always about the candidate, about the cause. And I think she did a great job hoodwinking people to think that she really believes in the cause. I think we're going to see her getting something promised by either Bernie or even Biden, and it'll be a year or two down the road. But she will be promised something. I think that's what will make her get out.
I don't think there's anything to promise her with. Her time to get out and endorse somebody was a week ago. At this point, if she gets out and endorses somebody, so what? She's damaged goods at this point. She probably cost Bernie at some level Massachusetts, but she also showed up in third place. She didn't come anywhere and win anything. She's under 15% in most places. She's really damaged goods. At this point, what does it matter if she endorses somebody or not? At this point, she's just going to be a nuisance.
So I don't think that Elizabeth Warren was ever a serious threat to win the nomination because she's just so unlikable, and her presence doesn't expand beyond basically white college educated women. And I mean, the polling reflects that. But I think everything started going downhill when she released the DNA test. I mean, if you think about it, she basically got trolled by my old boss, Howie Carr, and the president of the United States, Donald Trump, into taking a DNA test, which proved that we were right all along in criticizing her for falsely claiming to be a Native American. And she puts out this DNA test showing that she's got like a great cousin who was from Peru, and says, "This is my victory lap. Yes, I am in fact a Native American." And then even the Native American groups on the left are like, "Yeah, that's not really what this means at all." And you're kind of like, I don't know if it's stolen valor, but stolen heritage. It was a fraud. I mean, it really was her original sin in some ways. She's never been able to get away from it. And the tide started to turn for the progressive left when the Bernie bros, who are getting all kinds of criticism for being nasty online, but they're not going to agree with this Democratic Party omerta of not talking about Elizabeth Warren's original sin. Because none of the Democrats would have ever brought it up, but the Bernie bros will. The Bernie bros will go there. What was that, Tim?
And Steve, to your point, if you think about it, you've heard almost every candidate, you've heard their supporters say they make a connection somehow. Even on the Trump side, people say, I never thought I'd connect with the billionaire, but he seems to speak my language. I've never, ever once heard in podcasts in person say that they actually felt a connection to what Liz Warren had to say.
Yeah, that's true.
Running for Senate,
she's not very relatable. She's stiff and she's wooden, and she has that. She has that. You can see the politician training in her. You know, she's very guarded. She's not genuine. She's not authentic.
She was successful in the debates in taking out Mini Mike.
She was.
Anything that she did, she ripped the skin right off of that guy. I'm not sure that helped her, and I'm not sure it helped her progressive cause because it pushed him right into the Biden camp.
Yeah, so I guess the question we'll never know is, was that kind of a definitive moment for Mike Bloomberg and kind of ending whatever momentum he had going, or was he just a paper tiger all along? I tend to think that his support just really wasn't real, and it was all based on the television advertising. But I think that the more interesting aspect of Mike Bloomberg's candidacy is what it says about campaign finance and money in politics. Because, 3 years ago, we were talking about how the Russians buying $100,000 worth of Facebook ads was somehow determinative of the election. That, if they put those, I don't know, did you guys ever see those memes that the Russians supposedly were posting on Facebook? It was like Hillary Clinton arm wrestling Jesus, or, like Satan standing over Hillary's shoulder or something like that. So they spent $100,000 promoting those on Facebook, and the left wingers were trying to set their hair on fire and say that this is why Trump won. But Mike Bloomberg just set fire to $500 million, and he got like 15 delegates. $700 million. I mean, that's just it kind of puts the lie to this idea that somehow money is going to just ultimately decide political outcomes. And
I think money counts, but what counts more than anything else is having a cause. If you look at somebody like Barack Obama, you know what he stands for: hope and change. With Trump, it's drain the swamp. With Bloomberg, what is his cause? What does he stand for?
It's true. There
Nothing.
Despite all the money he spent on staff, there was really not a lot of talent around him. And you're already seeing the backbiting coming out of his people who work for him saying, hey, I want to talk to Politico. I want to give you an exclusive about how I helped pay people $20 an hour to stand at one of these rallies and do some goofy dance or something like that. So he really didn't get what he paid for, didn't get a lot of value out of that. And the good thing for Mike, though, is he spent what 0.5% of his fortune, not even. He's still the sixth or seventh richest.
Not even. So
yeah.
So a couple of statistics around that. Mike Bloomberg, first of all, we all know he hates Liz Warren, hates her. There is no love lost between the two of the reasons that he got into the race. He had said in October of 2019, I will not enter this race unless Joe Biden if he doesn't see Joe Biden being able to win. So part of the reason back at Liz Warren, because she really hurt him where it counts. The second thing is, as far as the money, $16 million per delegate that he spent. And that is also about $100 more than was spent for the Obamacare exchanges, which at the time was $600 million. And in the end, Mike Bloomberg spent all his money on advertising when he should have spent his money on political. I showed up, didn't know what to say. Liz Warren, like DEC said, took him out at the knees. No idea how to respond. Talk about stiff. Talk about not being able to engage with people. He should have worried more about getting some coaching and not spending double what Biden probably. I mean, he probably. I heard today stat he was paying his staff $40 grand a month. Most spending $20 grand a month. So this guy, for a rich person, when it comes to politics, man, does he spend like a drunken sailor.
Everything that I've heard about Mini Mike is that he is very thin-skinned, and you couldn't go in and debate prep him with things that were actually going to come at him because you would offend him. So, of course, he went in without any type of preparation because everybody was afraid to say he had no clothes.
Well, I imagine the guy probably doesn't get a lot of criticism in his life. When you're running your own company, it's a private company. You're not responsible to shareholders or anything like that. I guess the other interesting thing about Bloomberg's candidacy is the role of Bloomberg, the news outlet. I mean, they were always in a very precarious situation where they've basically been told you can't report on any of the Democrat candidates because this will look like that we're doing something sketchy. So they also couldn't write about Mike Bloomberg. I mean, if you're a journalist and you're working at Bloomberg, that puts you in a very, I guess, ethically challenging situation. And I guess they sent out a memo today saying, okay, you can report as normal on the race now. So that's good to know if you're working at Bloomberg. But I guess one other question I wanted to get into was, obviously when Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg both drop out in short succession and then just rapidly endorse Biden at that event. All of the Bernie Sanders people are saying this is a conspiracy. This is being stolen from us again. Here we go. It's like Hillary in 2016 all over again. But isn't this just politics? Like, Biden working the phone, telling Amy and Pete to drop out. And even if he promises Amy Klobuchar a spot on the ticket, even if he says to Pete, look, down the road, you're a young guy. I'll help you out. You'll have the Team Biden behind you at some point in the future. Like, I guess there are underhanded things happening in the DNC against Bernie Sanders. Granted, it happened in 2016. I know that there's a whole conspiracy, but isn't this just politics? Isn't this just coalition building? I think it's completely fair if Biden wants to offer some kind of post or some kind of job to Pete or Amy in exchange for them dropping out right before Super Tuesday. I think this
is a lot more than just politics. This is a coup d'etat in the DNC. This is more than Biden. The establishment itself has decided that they're going to push back against the socialists. The losers are not only Bernie, but AOC, the woman from Minnesota. These socialists who are out there are now marginalized. I would be incredibly pissed if I were Bernie's people, because they actually have a cause. I don't agree with it, but at least they're behind something that you can speak to. There's none of that with Biden. Biden has support because people are scared out of their minds about communists getting into the White House.
I mean,
that's his draw.
He's just a placeholder for the Democrat establishment. And he's also kind of a full employment program for all of these Democrat hacks who have been working on campaigns, working on the Beltway forever. So he is in some ways the safest of the candidates. I tend to believe that most Democrats actually support a lot of the things that Bernie supports. They just know that it's dumb from a messaging perspective to give Trump the chance to run against somebody who associates themselves with such a bloody ideology.
Yeah, he's really a McCain type guy right now. It feels like he's the guy who you feel is the best person to take out the other people who might be dangerous, but there's no there with Biden. Yeah,
well, and the other thing is, I'm not sold on the idea that Biden has the nomination wrapped up. I think that he's probably 55 or 60% likely to wrap it up, but I think Sanders still has a chance because Biden is always just one TV interview away from absolutely blowing himself up. I mean, the guy is clearly not mentally well. I know that the president of the United States, from time to time, the way he talks, he says some stupid shit, but Joe Biden it's very obvious that he is mentally unwell. And if I'm his campaign staff right now, I am keeping him away from the public. I'm keeping him off camera. I'm doing whatever I possibly can to make sure that he has as limited exposure as possible. That's the best possible thing he could do for his campaign. I mean, can you imagine what this guy's going to look like in debates when Donald Trump starts ripping him to shreds? I mean, even Bernie Sanders is sharper right now than Joe Biden. I mean, the next debate is in 11 days. And it's probably going to be just Bernie and Joe Biden. And I mean, how do you think Biden's going to fare during that? He's going to have a lot more time to talk. He actually has benefited in the earlier debates from having less speaking time because he really has some telltale problems. Like my grandmother, we knew things were going south when she would put like $20 in the fridge or put her car keys in the trash. Like Biden is at that level, and it's kind of shameful that the Democrat establishment has lifted this guy up and elevated him because he's the only way they believe they can stop Trump.
Oh, this is pure terror.
It's elder abuse.
Yeah. This is different than when he said stand up Chuck. There were things that he said back in 2008 that were just silly, or Biden being kind of a moron. This is telltale signs of early dementia, and he is 77 years old. If you elect this, you're putting this guy up here who's 77. What is going to happen 2-3 years down the road?
Yeah, I know. 1,000 different people have said it, but it's worth pointing out that Donald Trump is now the young buck in the race.
Yeah, no kidding.
So let's get back to something you said, Steve. It's just politics. The reason that the Bernie Bros are all upset.
Yeah.
Let's also not forget that the Democrat Party selects delegates is very, very wacky. It's crazy. It's a party that complained the last election about electoral college has a delegate system whereby if you win a county, you get all the delegates. So you could win, quote unquote, the popular vote. I think it might somewhere down south. But if you win certain counties, you So you could win the total popular vote, doesn't matter. You get all those delegates. This is the same party that says do away with the electoral college because it favor our candidate. So now it's coming back to bite them. And the thing that kills me is they still haven't reformed anything. That they still play with these rules and then complain when something bad happens and never makes a change. And I couldn't agree more. Joe Biden going off script is going to be a disaster for Joe Biden. About 3 sentences to go off script.
Yeah, but SC, now the fact that Biden is the one guy there versus Sanders. Oh, of course I did. Isn't that your name? Even though now he is going to go off script, do you think the media is even going to cover it now? Because now he's the one guy versus Sanders versus being one of 7.
Yeah, I think we can talk more broadly about how the media has handled this entire race, because on Tuesday, the media also lost. I think we saw just the implosion of all of their narrative or media-driven candidates. Like, you remember when, I guess, I don't know what order it came in, but there was the little Kamala Harris boomlet. There was the Beto O'Rourke boomlet. And you saw all these magazines, like the national political magazines like Politico or The Atlantic or the New York Times, whatever, lifting these people up and having just these glowing profiles of them, when it turns out that no real Americans supported these people whatsoever. And any chance they had to win was complete fabrication of political writers who just kind of need this horse race thing to write about. I mean, look at the power of the New York Times endorsement. I mean, we made fun of them on the show because when it came down to it, they couldn't even pick a single candidate. They just had to say, well, we want the women to win, Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren. And the Boston Globe, of course, endorses Elizabeth Warren. And then she comes in 3rd place in Massachusetts. So I think we kind of, the whole election process, the primary process, has showed, I guess, revealed a lot about how just shallow and manufactured a lot of the political writing is, because they've got to fill the pages. They've got to put words out there. So why not pretend like this skinny kid from Texas who calls himself Beto could actually be president of the United States? I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Beto O'Rourke? I think it's been an amazing campaign, a lot of fun, but always redounding to Donald Trump's benefit.
I was listening to Eric Erickson today, so this is not an original thought, but he talked about how the media has dumbed it down because their audience is men 25 to 54, and more specifically 25 to 34. And if you're going to grab that audience, you kind of have to go fast pace, kind of make it sexy, actionable. And so the result that you have here is not really factual information, but really a drama series, which doesn't lead any credence to what's going on.
So I don't think we can talk about the how the media handled this without getting to the Chris Matthews situation. But first, I just wanted to lock in some predictions here. Who do we think is going to be the nominee of the Democrat Party, and will they be able to beat Trump? Tim and Canton, what do you think?
Absolutely running away with this already in Colorado. Combined votes, I believe, between Biden and Bernie didn't even come close to what Trump got in an uncontested race. And how many people voted as Democrats yesterday that are Republicans because they didn't want to vote in the Republican primary? I think Trump runs away with this unless it has to do with the economy or Corona get to.
I say Biden's already the nominee at this point. By Biden being the nominee, he's put Florida back in play. I think Biden's got a very good shot at this, and I think it's going to be a lot closer. He does put Michigan back in play. It's probably going to come down to Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, which is too close to call. And right now, if Biden doesn't have a message, it's going to be totally about what do we think about Trump? And is there the unforeseen happening? Does coronavirus get worse? Does the economy tank because of it? If all of those bad things happen, Trump loses. If coronavirus is less than what we think and the economy rebounds, Trump wins.
Yeah, so we're going to be a little bit like that shitty movie podcast from The Ringer. What's it called? Box Office or something like that? Because I agree. I agree with both of you guys. I think that Biden is right now the most likely person to win the nomination. So I'd say, if the election were held today, Biden wins. I think a lot of it will depend on how Bernie Sanders handles the fallout. I think Bernie learned a lesson in 2016. Like, he fell in line like a good little party soldier, and he got on that private jet and he flew to all the states that Hillary Clinton needed. And he got out there and said, "You got to go vote for Hillary. You got to vote for Hillary. I know there's some hurt feelings, but hey, the revolution can take a pause. We need to vote for Hillary." And then look what they did to him. I know he's got his new third house out of it, but I think he understands that he got dealt a shit hand last time around. So I don't see him jumping on the speaking circuit to go stump for Joe Biden. And I also don't think that his people are gonna fall in line. I don't know. They seem like the energized foot soldiers of the left, and they're critical to any successful coalition that you need in the Democrat Party. But I see them more like, taking their ball and going home and saying, fuck you guys. You didn't give Bernie Sanders a good shake. You didn't treat him right twice. There was all this energy around him, all this money around him, and he didn't do it with corporate money or PAC money. And they say, screw it. We'll President Trump will be more acceptable to us for 2 years than potentially 8 years of Joe Biden. But let's get to the Chris Matthews story a little bit. So I don't know, you guys are a little bit older than me, so you might have more experience watching Chris Matthews. But I was reading a profile written about him. I guess it's more like a public obituary. And, he was never actually a journalist. He got a job in the 80s. In the 80s, he wrote that book called Hardball, and he got a job working as a columnist for a California newspaper. And he would always he'd write like one column, 600 words a week, and just used it as a platform to go on TV a bunch until he got his own TV show. I thought that was kind of interesting. And we had him on the show with Howie a few times, and he was always kind of, curmudgeonly, but it seems like he kind of, I don't know, the Me Too movement unfolded in a weird way for him. Because it was
I don't think it was Me Too. I think it was Bernie Bros. He made that comment about Bernie, equating it to Nazis invading France.
Yeah. So I guess that Laura, I think her name is Laura Bassett. She wrote this story because she worked with him, and I guess what he's accused of is just making these kind of suggestive commenting on women's looks. I guess he would rate female guests he was having, kind of like the Boston Globe used to do with interns. So I guess, maybe it would make more sense, but I don't think that the Bernie Bros really have a lot of sway at MSNBC. Right.
No, they hate the Bernie Bros over there. This was a death by 1,000 cuts. It was the misplacing Tim Scott. It was the Nazi comment. It was the comment about women. I mean, he's been doing this for years and years, and it probably was. This was the time for them to do it. It sounds like his wife was embarrassed, the family was embarrassed, and they just finally pulled the plug, and everybody was on board except Chris.
Yeah, it seems kind of strange to me because I know Maddow is like the big Reddit ratings getter at MSNBC. As weird as that is to say, people tune in for that. I bet there's a ton of revenue associated with her. I don't really feel the same way about Chris Matthews. I mean, when was the last time someone? I don't even know what his critical audience is, and I don't know if he has this huge loyal audience or if it's really going to be a revenue problem for MSNBC that he's gone. Because if you look at a guy like Bill O'Reilly was the top guy in cable news for however many years, and there was a ton of money associated with him. He was a cash cow for Fox for a number of years, and I think that is one of the reasons why they were willing to pay $32 million worth of settlements to women that he harassed. But I just don't see that with Chris Matthews. And you know what? I'm kind of sad that he's gone because I'm talking about him like he's dead. For all intents and purposes, he is dead. But I think that he was the last of an old, different style of Democrat. He's the kind of Democrat that looked at this, the idea of intersectionality and all of the woke liberalism that's going on, and said oh, what is going on? You're stupid. No, we got to talk about jobs. We got to talk about the economy.
He was a Tip O'Neill guy. I think he worked for Tip.
Yeah,
O'Neill.
He worked for Tip O'Neill.
He's that type of Democrat.
He's a cold holder for him, and he actually was one of the few that would actually have a conversation with the other side of the aisle. He would argue, he'd be entertaining, but I also think he's a guy who hit for average. He's not a Bill O'Reilly. The guy was there forever. He was never a standout, but he was consistent. He delivered. I think it was rather abrupt to come on at the beginning of the show too.
See,
not even at the end.
I actually respect that though. The kind of fuck off, I'm leaving move. I mean, I think that's what that guy in the Facebook chat said that I was going to do on Friday's episode of the Kirk Minahan show. He was going to pull a Chris Matthews and just leave. But I think that's great. If he was getting if he was getting a raw deal at MSNBC, he has no. I guess he doesn't owe them any kind of peaceful departure. I have no problem with him leaving mid-show like that. But you could tell, I think it was Steve Kornacki came on after him and was just like, had no idea what he was going to do. All right, so I think we can move on to talk a little bit about the general election. And, regardless of whether it's Bernie or Biden that he's running against, I think increasingly the biggest negative that President Trump has going for him is the coronavirus and the economy. I think everybody's recognized all along that having a great economy would be one of the things, I guess the wind's kind of at your back as an incumbent president when the unemployment rate is low. But now it seems like we have this black swan event that is, driving the stock market nuts. And I think is the bigger threat to his candidacy than any kind of negative ads that Biden or Bernie or the DNC or Emily's List could run. And it only seems to be getting worse. I think they just announced that there's been a fatality in California, and it's like, is it Amazon's headquarters in Seattle? Tim, why are you laughing? This is serious shit. People are dying.
I'm getting a text from a couple of Minifans. They're cracking me up. Can I clarify something? I was not watching Tube Galore, although that is a great site. There was a sticker over my camera so my company can't spy on me when I'm working, and apparently I got gummed up with all the glue. So all you commenters, shut the hell up. And then my mouth is open because I'm freaking trying to breathe. I get a cold. Assholes.
Do you have coronavirus?
I could.
Do you have coronavirus?
COVID-19 Providence.
See, you guys joked when I said that coronavirus might be a threat to the Wilbur show, but you never know. You get a couple thousand cases. They could crack down on private gatherings. I don't know.
Well, do you think there is an overreaction right now? How much is the media culpable in this? I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it in the context of the media and politics, is because all the incentives are obvious. The Democrats with their Twitter accounts, or the MSNBC, any of the political writers, they're going to try. I mean, they're telegraphing it. They're saying this is Trump's Katrina moment. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for some kind of unprecedented event that they can weaponize against President Trump. And I mean, frankly, we haven't really. It's not like coronavirus has been out there for a year now, and people have been sick and getting and dying. I mean, the federal government has only had a few weeks to respond, and they're already talking like, this is just a disaster for President Trump. They just passed an aid package where we're going to spend a bunch of $1 billion trying to put out test kits. It does seem like the federal government is the response could be better, I would say, but I don't know. That's why you don't put your faith in the federal government to really do anything besides national defense and maybe a little bit of monetary policy.
I think there's a lot of things they could have done wrong. They could have not rerouted flights. They could have opened the border. But if you take a look at where the United States is, there's 153 cases. If you look at Europe, which has open borders, it's far worse in a far smaller geographic footprint. I think there's a lot there that Trump's going to get blamed for, but he doesn't really have a lot of control over.
I would agree. And I also think that it's probably worse here in the United States than they're actually saying. I think that.
Don't you think it's worse in China than we've been told as well?
Absolutely. Every government basically has an incentive not to really be honest with how the infection is spreading, and there's a lot that we really don't know about it. But the way the media is sensationalizing it is frankly amazing. I mean, if you can remember the different hobby horses of the media over the last few years, you had the Mueller report, you had what Jim Comey was going to say, you had the impeachment. Those all feel like they were a million bajillion years ago. Because now the new thing is coronavirus and the inept Trump administration getting Americans killed. That's what they're going to be talking about. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I don't know what effect it's going to have come election day. I know that it's affected my 401k, but guess one other thing.
Giving you a SE, it's giving you a buying opportunity. You're not,
That's
if you
true.
actually
That's
are
true.
30 years old,
Yeah.
you don't have to take this out for 30 or 40 years. The stock market is depressed artificially. This is a short-term painful event. It will rebound. It rebounded after 2008, and that was a more fundamental issue with the economy.
I do get a kick out of the stock market collapsing, this largest intraday drop of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The day that Portnoy and Erica Nardini are ringing the closing bell. Like the day Barstool gets to the stock market, everything goes to shit. So I guess the last few things, unless you guys have anything you want to bring up, kind of happening.
I would just say on the coronavirus, on a different strain, so to speak, and there is no B thread like some people think.
Yeah, that was a good call. And if you're not paying attention, Tim and Canton got a prank phone call.
No. That was Steve.
Oh,
that was
yes,
my boy, Steve.
God, sorry, Steve from Providence. Forgive me. Steve from Providence got through on OMF and convinced them that there were 2 strains of coronavirus. Some very thrilling, very enlightened talk about the coronavirus. Probably more so than what we have here.
But this is I am absolutely convinced this is a man-made issue. Not that the virus.
Really? Yeah, you think it came out of a bioweapons lab in China or some shit? I could get down with that.
There's a lab in Wuhan that does research on coronaviruses.
Don't even get me started, and I'll tell you right now, it started in Boston. BL4 is run by Boston University. Dr. Charles Lieber from Harvard University was arrested for taking money from the Chi-Coms and not reporting it. And he set up 2 laboratories in Wuhan, Hubei, China. And there were also 2 other. One was a Chinese People's Liberation Army lieutenant who came here under the guise of being a student. They get arrested. They're back in China, but there's an arrest warrant out for them. They all worked for BU or Harvard. This guy had access to nanotechnology. I have no doubt in my mind he somehow brought the design or maybe a sample over to Wuhan and created this whole problem. And I think the Chinese were trying to weaponize something and get out of their hands.
I'm like half-mast right now with the conspiracy.
I was listening to the podcast Science Versus on Gimlet, which is not a conspiracy theory thing. It's legitimately about science. And about a month ago, they talked about the fact that the virus is relatively new, that they think it emerged because of its structure as something fresh around the end of November. And then next thing you know, everybody's getting it. Something that wasn't lying in the woods and is fresh leads credence to that was something that was manufactured.
Certainly wasn't bat friggin' soup, I'll tell you that much.
I think I could survive Corona. I'm not really that worried about it.
The younger you are, the better off you're going to be.
And I'm young, I'm healthy, I eat my vitamins. I'm not a smoker. I think I can fuck with Corona.
Can we maybe I love the hubris. Can we you are the only guy I know who could literally physically fight a virus with your fist. But maybe KMS polls could figure out how many people from the Minoverse are actually going to contract coronavirus. Because there are fans. We're part of a group that's worldwide now.
Well, Kelleher's going to lie about it so he can get back on the show.
I stand by my original prediction. I think you'll probably see like 70 to 80% of people infected.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and then I mean, hopefully the mortality rate isn't that high, but I mean, people are going to die.
People are going to get it. And they're going to walk around with it.
Wise words from SC about coronavirus. People are going to die. So just a couple more things. Did you guys see Chuck Schumer today, the Senate Minority Leader, out there standing in front of the Supreme Court and threatening 2 justices of the Supreme Court? It's just I think that the Supreme Court should be open to criticism. It's not like they're these robed gods sitting up on the bench and you can't criticize them whatsoever. Lord knows I've done enough criticizing of the liberal Supreme Court justices. I think Schumer, though, is one of these guys who comes out and talks about how wrong it is for Trump to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or how Trump is undermining the norms of the unspoken rules of politics, and he's assaulting our institutions. But then he comes out and he does something like this, and I think that he's not a particularly effective leader for the Democrats in the Senate. And I don't think it was a great move for him to do this. I mean, if you're a Supreme Court justice and you're edging one way or leaning one way on a decision, is a death threat from Chuck Schumer really going to change the way you're thinking in a way that's favorable to Schumer? I don't think so.
I don't think it's appropriate, but it's more dangerous to be between Chuck Schumer and a microphone. But even if you look at what he said, this is more than just saying I'm criticizing the Supreme Court. He's having threatening statements, talking. You have released the whirlwind. You'll pay the price. How do you not look at that as something from like the 1860s as a threat?
Yeah, no, I think it's clearly a threat. I mean, in a functioning democracy, we would be able to. They would just vote him out of the Senate for something like that, or at the very least, vote to censure him. I think it's like 50% of it's just like a bare majority that you need to censure somebody. But I mean, even then, that's practically meaningless. But I think one of the things what we're dealing with is the impact of Trump. You know, he's brought this kind of coarseness to our politics where you can insult people and you can say these things and you can have bombast, and it's just the new usual. I mean,
well, I'm gonna challenge you. I'm gonna challenge you on that one, SC, because you do know history. So when I hear people say this is the first time this has ever occurred in our history, it's not true. There were fisticuffs in the well of the Senate in the House.
No,
right?
Of course, I know.
In our time,
Andrew Jackson was a famous critic of the Supreme Court as well.
Absolutely,
I understand all of that, but I do think that what the difference now is that it's basically just like who can have the snappiest, most overheated tweet responding to the president or on some kind of issue, or who can be snarky. I mean, like another good example of how I guess the viral instinct or the social media has really fucked up our politics is, did you see Matt Gaetz today? He's wearing a full gas mask on the floor of the House when they go to vote for this. It's like, come on, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You just look like an asshole. But then he gets all kinds of retweets and earned media, and everyone's like, oh, MAGA. But
well, what I don't understand with Schumer is it is kind of out of his persona where that came from. I'm not sure that it's necessarily Trump. That really kind of threw me for a loop, because Chuck, in the end, he wants to stay in power. He's always played both sides. He's very good at it. You don't hear a lot of criticism of him by his peers. People are willing to work with him. So I was more surprised. Where the hell did that come from? Why was he so upset? And honestly, in the end, I don't even know what he was yelling about.
It was a Supreme Court case dealing with legalized abortion. But didn't really strike me as out of character. What I actually thought about was prior, I think it was just a few days before Trump was inaugurated, when he came out and said that if you criticize the intelligence community, they have 7 ways from Sunday at getting back to you. I mean, that was scarier than threatening the Supreme Court justices. Basically, he was saying that, these shadowy actors within the intelligence community were going to somehow seek revenge or carry out a revenge plot against President Trump. I thought that was pretty fucked up. But I guess one other thing that's going on that is kind of not really getting attention, just because the political media tends to be just on a single track mind about the Democratic race, is that President Trump has now struck a deal with the Taliban, apparently. Mm-hmm. And there's some kind of ceasefire or plan to get out of Afghanistan. And, I remember back in when Obama was first running in 2007, 2008, his entire line was obviously very critical of the Iraq war, but then saying, the Afghanistan is actually where the fight should be. That's where the terror attack on 9/11 was planned and I guess managed, and that's where the real fight. That's the good war of Bush's
training
war.
Camps.
Exactly, but I mean, now we're what are we, 19 or 20 years into
that's
a
crazy
war with no definable idea of what victory looks like. I just think that at this point in time, there's no way. I guess it's not going to be a good way to pull out of Afghanistan. We just need to rip it off like a Band-Aid. Just get the fuck out. And I mean, it's a tribal warring country. They just like to fight, and there's really no goal for us there. And as far as, the planning of terrorism, I mean, sure, you could say that there hasn't been a 9/11 style terror attack since we, started spending trillions of dollars in the Middle East. But I think that there are other ways that we can fight terrorism. I just don't see why American blood and treasure needs to be spent in Afghanistan, some third world shithole.
Well, not only that, the peace accord was signed, and in less than, I think, 48 hours, there have been 70 attacks by the Taliban. So it shows you how much that paper is worth that they signed. I couldn't agree more. Get out. I mean, the Al-Qaeda is mostly gone. ISIS is mostly gone. They move around. Not all of these countries want Al-Qaeda or ISIS having training grounds in their country. Yemen was the latest example. They got pounded into the last Stone Age for housing some of the ISIS fighters and Al Qaeda. So I think the message is clear. There's nowhere for these guys to set up base anymore. If you revert back to where Al Qaeda comes from, it was our invasion of Iraq originally, is what Al Qaeda was actually based upon. But it is time to go, brother.
Yeah, I would say that these guys are bad hombres, as our president would say. I wouldn't want the Taliban to win, but if the Taliban do take over again, how is this going to negatively impact our country? I think there are other threats to our country right now, especially around cyber warfare. We're fighting a war from 20 years ago. And yeah, terrorism is a bad thing. But right now, there are things going on in China and in Russia.
Thanks for clarifying that, DEC.
Yeah.
Terrorism is a bad thing.
These are bad. These are some really bad, not good guys. And I think there are other things that we need to put our attention to that is more of a threat to the United States.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, just the millions of people dying, or I shouldn't say millions, tens of thousands of people who are dying from heroin all the time. That would seem to be, I guess, like a bigger quality of life thing for your average American than whatever's happening in Afghanistan. And frankly, I don't really care if the Taliban takes over Afghanistan. I just would like, I would like no more soldiers dying over there. Is there anything else that you guys want to get to? That was my list of topics. I don't know if there's anything Kirk Minahan world related. Again, I'll be seeing Kirk on Sunday and taping a show with him. It's going to be short. It's going to be solo, just Kirk, and don't really know what to expect from it. It's been hard to read his tone lately. Asked him what we should expect for next week. Will we be doing any full regular shows? And he said, I don't know yet. So it's hard to tell. I think it's a day by day thing, but I mean, he's still texting. He's still involved, and hopefully I'll be able to give you guys a little bit more of an update Sunday night after I talk with him.
I think this is a case where we as a community want him just to get healthy. I'm taking the view that he's not going to be around this month at all. And if there are things I can do to help, to add content or do whatever, I want to do that because his health. What's that?
Feed your kids.
Okay, so what I said is I want to help the show. I think this is a case of Kirk the man is much more important than this little stuff that we're doing here, and I just want him to be healthy. This is not worth him losing his life over.
Couldn't agree more. I go back to the comment he made about the Wilbur show and saying he felt like Bob Fosse. He's up in the middle of the night. He's thinking about things that he wants to do. He's constantly changing things. So the obsession he had with the show, you look back and you think there are all these signs, but in the end, the day that tweet came out, the helplessness that I felt in hoping to reach out to a guy, it must be magnified by 1,000,000 with what he's going through. And it's just incredible that he is able to say, I need this help. I need to take a break. And I couldn't agree more with DEC. Everybody, to a man, to a woman, to a minifan or a mincel, has said, just get better. That's all we want, is for him to get better.
And what a difference between Entercom, where Barstool rallied behind this guy, and it just shows what a bunch of scumbags the people at Entercom are. And you're right, we've been fighting with this bracket thing. We have to wage full-scale war about Entercom because we have to remember what they did to Kirk and remember what Barstool has done, which is the opposite.
Exactly. I mean, behind the scenes, publicly, Barstool's been nothing but supportive. It's been great. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty in this situation. There's no manual that tells you like, oh, here's what you do if you find yourself in this situation. And they've been great. And I guess the last thing I'll leave you with is Mike and I taped a show today, and we addressed. I think I told you, DC. We addressed the text message that Mike sent to Kirk. When Kirk texted us and said that he was, suffering from depression and suicidal thoughts and was going to be seeking treatment, the text that Mike sent back was just like perfect blind Mike. So we talk about that on the show that we'll be releasing around midnight tonight.
Oh, I can't wait for that
tomorrow morning. Well, DEC, Tim and Canton, thank you very much. If anybody else out there is watching this wants to come on, I think it might be nice to get a little bit more political diversity on the show going forward. I think it'd be nice to get some liberals in here so we can make fun of them. Maybe get a Bernie bro in here to talk about the DNC's conspiracy against them and it might be interesting to get more diverse perspectives.
I know a guy who has a brother who works at Apple. He's a good liberal. I'm sure he would be incredibly coherent.
We're not having Brian Riccio on the show.
SE, do you want to do my my F Mary cuckold with the presidential candidates, or do we want to get that perverse? By the way, this is not.
We want to get that perverse.
This is not a British flag for any of those ignorant asses posting comments. This is an American revolutionary flag. Know your history. This is from when the country was founded. You boneheads.
And Steve was there.
Yeah,
I was there for the whole thing. Actually, you know what? You brought up Apple. The guy who did the Steve's a Liar song actually had an interesting idea. He wants me to do a show called Steve Jobs, and it's just me talking about different jobs. Like different jobs I've had, I guess. I don't know.
kind of like a Dirty Jobs, or
Yeah, kind of like Dirty Jobs, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll continue to experiment with different ways we can put out content. I saw it. Somebody in the chat said, what does Steve do when there's no show? I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm
Cooking.
Yeah, no, I haven't really been doing much of cooking. I've been in kind of a down mood when I'm feeling blue. I don't really like to cook. But
what if any of the Minifans were to invite you to a day in the life of a Minifan, and you could pal around with them for a couple hours, like Dirty Jobs or that Behind the CEO, whatever it's called?
So
I
Mike's
would never do that.
Mike's already doing something like that, where he does the life of a parody, and I know he's got a few more of those lined up. So I don't want to step on his toes too much. And when you think about it, I mean, I don't really have that much talent. I basically just can talk about politics. So that's really why that's what I'm doing. I'm going back to the one useful thing I can do if I'm not producing a podcast, and also just pulling up lists of potential advertisers once the show comes back. And it's been a weird thing because selling the shows is part of what I do. But do you call this week or next week with the headlines that we've seen, and can you sell a show that's not currently on? I don't know. I'm just kind of more in a planning and preparing type move.
Hey, Steve, I do have a question.
I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. I know that there was some criticism online saying, well, what the fuck has Steve been doing? But there's really not a lot for me to do.
I do have a question for you. Did you hear Jerry Callahan's comments? And I'm just curious from the show's perspective, what were your thoughts on what Jerry said?
I did hear what Jerry said. I think that's great that he addressed it and mentioned it. I don't know. He's kind of got like a weird, he's got a weird way of interacting with Kirk. I mean, it's a peculiar relationship that they have, I think, on both ends. And I don't really have a lot of insight into it. I know Jerry has no time for me whatsoever, but I think at the end of the day, I mean, they're always going to be friends. I mean, you can't go through what they went through, the ups and the downs together, and not have some basic level of friendship. And as much as Kirk talks about how he's burned every professional bridge he's ever had in his life, like I think that one with Jerry is probably one that I don't think will be burnt down. So it was good that he addressed it, but I mean, I didn't think there was anything particularly noteworthy in what he said. Did you?
I thought it was good. Some people said, why did he wait to the end? And I'm just going with the assumption that if he started at the beginning of the show, it either would have derailed him or maybe it would have been too emotional to switch topics.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with where in the show it came from. I mean, one way or another, we're going to hear it. I mean, the Minifans find and hear everything that's uttered about Kirk. So it was going to get out there. Kirk was going to hear it at some point. So, actually, I mean, kudos to the Minifan who made it all the way through.
You mean all the way through this?
Yeah, no, all the way through the Jerry Callahan podcast.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, that was you.
That was me.
Shame.
I saw the comments there. I'm like, all right, I got to see what he had to say. So I got all the way through. It said it was an hour, but I'm like, man, this felt as long as one of Kirk's shows.
All right. Well, unless you guys have anything else, I mean, I think we'll try and look for some libs to come on here. But I appreciate you guys jumping on with me. It was almost an hour. It's a pretty good show. I guess this is S.E. Robinson signing off.
Later, dudes.